Tommy Lee Jones truly hated him more than anyone. Guess who? Hollywood friendships, feuds, and fallings out have captivated audiences for generations. But few Hollywood relationships have been marked by such instant, intense, and unmitigated dislike as the one between Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey on the set of 1995's Batman Forever. It wasn't just professional disagreement. It wasn't creative differences that could be worked through. It was pure, undiluted contempt, a visceral reaction so strong that nearly 3 decades later, the story still follows both men, a permanent footnote in their otherwise stellar careers. "I've been on a lot of difficult sets with clashing personalities," revealed a crew member who worked on Batman Forever and requested anonymity, "but I've never seen anything like the hatred Tommy Lee Jones had for Jim Carrey. It wasn't just dislike, it was as if Jim's very existence offended him on a cellular level." What makes this Hollywood hatred so fascinating isn't just its intensity, but its one-sided nature. Carrey, by all accounts, began the production admiring Jones and hoping to form a bond with the Oscar winner. Instead, he encountered a wall of hostility so impenetrable that it culminated in one of the most awkward and brutal face-to-face encounters ever reported between 2 A-list stars. The restaurant confrontation, where Jones reportedly told Carrey to his face, "I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery," has become legendary in Hollywood circles, a moment of raw honesty rarely captured in an industry built on fake smiles and diplomatic non-answers. But what really happened between these 2 stars? What could Carrey possibly have done to inspire such loathing from the normally professional Jones? And why, after all these years, has this particular Hollywood hatred endured while so many other celebrity feuds have faded from memory? Today, we're exploring the truth behind Tommy Lee Jones's extraordinary dislike of Jim Carrey, a story that reveals as much about 2 contrasting approaches to acting as it does about the clash of personalities that created one of Hollywood's most infamous and enduring rivalries. The animosity between Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey represents more than just a personal dislike. It symbolizes a fundamental clash between 2 radically different approaches to acting and stardom. Jones, with his studied intensity and classical training, embodied the serious craftsman approach to performance, while Carrey represented a more spontaneous, anarchic energy that was transforming comedy in the 1990s. When these opposing forces collided on the set of a big-budget superhero film, the result was a perfect storm of mutual incomprehension and one-sided contempt that would become the stuff of Hollywood legend. What makes this particular clash so revealing is how it illuminates not just personal differences, but deeper divides in acting philosophies, generational approaches to fame, and the sometimes impossible task of reconciling serious artistic ambition with commercial entertainment. As we explore what really happened between these 2 stars, we're actually examining a fundamental tension that runs through the entire entertainment industry, the uneasy relationship between artistic credibility and popular appeal that continues to define Hollywood to this day.
So everywhere I go, people talk about the beard. They go, "What are you doing? Why are you growing a beard? Why are you growing a beard?" It's like...
Clashing styles, they were co-stars, but not equals. When casting for 1995's Batman Forever was announced, it seemed like an inspired pairing of talent. Tommy Lee Jones would bring gravitas and intensity to the role of Two-Face, while Jim Carrey would inject his manic energy into the Riddler. On paper, the contrast between their styles would create perfect counterpoint. 2 different kinds of menace for Val Kilmer's Batman to confront. Reality proved far less harmonious. From the first day on set, it became apparent that Jones and Carrey weren't just different actors with different styles. They were representatives of fundamentally opposed approaches to the craft that made genuine collaboration nearly impossible. Tommy wanted gravitas. Carrey gave him cartoon chaos, explained a production assistant who witnessed their interactions throughout filming. It was like watching a classically trained violinist forced to jam with a punk rock guitarist. They weren't just playing different instruments, they were playing different music entirely. The timing of their pairing couldn't have created a more perfect storm of contrasts. Jones was fresh from winning an Academy Award for The Fugitive, confirming his status as one of Hollywood's most respected serious actors after decades of acclaimed work. Carrey, meanwhile, had just experienced a meteoric rise to become the biggest comedy star in the world after the back-to-back successes of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber, all released within a single year. Their career trajectories couldn't have been more different. Jones had methodically built his reputation through years of character work and serious dramatic roles. Gradually earning industry respect and critical acclaim, Carey had exploded into superstardom almost overnight, bringing a manic, rubber-faced comedic style that was revolutionizing screen comedy but raising eyebrows among more traditional actors. They represented different generations, different approaches, and different definitions of success, noted entertainment journalist Rebecca Santos, who covered Batman Forever during its production. Jones came up in an era where serious acting meant restraint, technique, and emotional truth. Carey represented something new, comedy as physical expression taken to almost surreal extremes. These differences manifested immediately in their working methods. Jones approached Two-Face with meticulous attention to psychological motivation and character detail, while Carey treated the Riddler as a playground for his improvisational talents, constantly inventing new bits, movements, and line readings. According to multiple set sources, Jones found Carey's approach not just different, but actively disrespectful to the craft he had spent decades mastering. He reportedly viewed Carey's constant improvisation and physical comedy as lacking discipline and undermining the integrity of the production. You could see Tommy's jaw tighten every time Jim went off script or added some wild physical flourish, recalled a camera operator who worked on their scenes. For Tommy, acting was about serving the story through careful choices. Jim's approach was more like controlled chaos, throwing everything at the wall to see what might stick. Their scenes together were incredibly tense because these philosophies are fundamentally incompatible. Adding to the tension was the shifting commercial landscape their pairing represented. While Jones was the more decorated actor with an Oscar to his name, Carey was commanding an unprecedented $20 million per film after his breakout year, making him the higher-paid performer despite his relative newcomer status in Hollywood. There was definitely an awareness that the industry was changing, noted Santos. Jones had put in decades of serious work to reach the top of his profession, only to find himself sharing a set with someone who'd become a bigger commercial draw almost overnight, with what Tommy viewed as silly faces and bathroom humor. That's a tough pill to swallow for someone from his generation and background. Director Joel Schumacher found himself in the unenviable position of trying to bridge this divide, but according to crew members, his efforts to create harmony between his villains were largely unsuccessful. The director reportedly took both actors aside separately multiple times during production, trying to establish a working relationship that could at least function professionally, if not warmly. Joel kept trying to frame their differences as complementary rather than conflicting, said the production assistant. He'd tell Tommy that Jim's unpredictability would make their scenes more dynamic, and he'd encourage Jim to find moments of stillness that might better mesh with Tommy's style. But it was like trying to mix oil and water. The elements simply refused to combine. The result was a strange on-screen dynamic where Jones and Carey, despite playing villains who supposedly collaborate, appear to exist in almost entirely separate films. Film critics at the time noted the odd disconnection between their performances, with Roger Ebert writing that Jones and Carey never seemed to establish any genuine relationship despite their characters' alliance. They seemed to be acting in different movies that happened to be spliced together. This disconnection wasn't accidental. It was the visible result of a fundamental incompatibility that would soon explode from professional tension into personal animosity in a way that would become Hollywood legend.
I don't care whether you think you're innocent or not. I don't care if you say you're innocent or not. That's
Verbal ambush, the restaurant incident that ended it all. The most infamous moment in the Jones-Carey feud, the confrontation that would cement their discord in Hollywood history, occurred not on set, but in a restaurant during production of Batman Forever. As Carey himself has recounted numerous times over the years, this encounter transformed what might have remained professional tension into something far more personal and enduring. According to Carey's account, he spotted Jones dining at a popular restaurant where many of the cast and crew would eat during the film's production. Hoping to break the ice and perhaps establish a warmer working relationship, Carey approached Jones's table to say hello. What happened next has become one of Hollywood's most brutally honest moments. As Carey described it during an appearance on Norm Macdonald's show, the maitre d' said, "Oh, I hear you're working with Tommy Lee Jones. He's over in the corner having dinner." I went over and I said, "Hey Tommy, how are you doing?" And the blood just drained from his face. In that moment, Jones reportedly stood up, hugged Carey in what appeared to be a friendly greeting, and then delivered a statement of raw honesty rarely captured in Hollywood interactions. "I hate you, I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery." He hugged me, and then he verbally slapped me in the face, Carey recalled, still showing signs of shock years later when recounting the story the comedian described being stunned into silence, managing only an awkward laugh before retreating from the table, the interaction leaving a lasting impression that has followed both actors for decades. The restaurant incident is particularly revealing because it transformed what might have remained a private professional disagreement into an openly acknowledged personal animosity. Jones's statement wasn't about Carey's work or approach. It was about Carey himself, a rejection not just of his acting style, but seemingly of his entire persona. What makes that moment so extraordinary in Hollywood terms is its complete lack of pretense, observed entertainment journalist Rebecca Santos. This is an industry built on fake smiles and diplomatic non-answers. For Jones to express such unfiltered contempt to a co-star's face, especially one at the height of his commercial power, violated every unwritten rule of Hollywood etiquette. For Carey, the incident was clearly hurtful in a way that has lingered. Though he typically recounts the story with his characteristic humor and self-deprecation, interviewers who have asked him about it over the years note a flicker of genuine hurt that crosses his face when describing Jones's words. "I was a fan. I thought he'd be fun. He was not," Carey stated simply in one interview, the understatement revealing more about his disappointment than a more elaborate explanation could have conveyed. What makes the restaurant confrontation particularly significant is how it crystallized the fundamental nature of Jones's dislike. This wasn't just professional frustration or creative differences, it was a visceral rejection of everything Carey represented as a performer and cultural figure. Jones didn't just dislike Jim as a colleague, he seemed offended by his very existence, noted a production crew member. The word buffoonery is particularly telling. It suggests Jones viewed Carey's entire approach to entertainment as beneath the dignity of serious acting, as something that degraded not just their film, but the craft itself. The public nature of the restaurant encounter, occurring in a venue frequented by industry professionals, ensured that word of the interaction spread quickly through Hollywood circles. What had been whispered about on set was now confirmed. One of Hollywood's most respected dramatic actors had openly declared his contempt for its biggest comedy star. It became the talk of the production, remembered the crew member. People would lower their voices and ask, "Did you hear what Tommy said to Jim?" It created this strange atmosphere where everyone was walking on eggshells around both of them, afraid of appearing to take sides in a conflict that had now moved beyond professional disagreement into something much more personal. For the remainder of the production, Carey and Jones maintained a cold professionalism in their unavoidable scenes together, but according to multiple sources, they never again attempted any interaction beyond the absolute minimum required to complete the film. The restaurant confrontation had drawn a line that neither man would cross again on Batman Forever or at any point in the decades since. "He hugged me, and then he verbally slapped me in the face," became more than just an anecdote. It became a perfect encapsulation of Hollywood's capability for fake warmth immediately followed by genuine cruelty, a moment of raw honesty in an industry built on careful image management and diplomatic untruths.
I said, "Hey, Tommy, how you doing?" Like that, and the blood just drained from his face. like he had been thinking of...
Professional freeze. Jones refused to work with him on set. Following the restaurant confrontation, what had been merely an uncomfortable working relationship deteriorated into something approaching a complete professional freeze-out. According to multiple crew members who worked on Batman Forever, Jones implemented a strategy that allowed him to fulfill his contractual obligations while minimizing any actual interaction with Carey. He thought Jim was ruining the film and embarrassing him by association, explained a camera operator who worked closely with both actors. So he developed this approach where he'd essentially pretend Carey didn't exist except during the absolute minimum moments required by the script. This strategy manifested in several ways that created significant challenges for the production. Perhaps most disruptive was Jones's reported refusal to rehearse scenes with Carey present. According to several sources, Jones would work through his blocking and dialogue with director Joel Schumacher while Carey was absent, then refused to run lines or practice interactions that would normally be standard procedure for scenes involving both characters. Tommy would wait until cameras were rolling, say his lines cold, and walk away, recalled a production assistant. No rehearsal, no discussion of how the scene might develop, no acknowledgement of Jim's choices or ideas. He'd do the minimum professional requirement and then physically remove himself from Jim's presence as quickly as possible. This approach created obvious technical challenges. Without proper rehearsals, timing and positioning became more difficult, often requiring additional takes to achieve the necessary timing and flow. Crew members remember Schumacher's growing frustration as he attempted to create cohesive scenes between characters who were supposed to be allies but were portrayed by actors who couldn't stand to be in the same space. You'd have these scenes where Two-Face and Riddler are supposed to be plotting together, feeding off each other's energy, and instead you had two actors who couldn't even look at each other between takes, the camera operator explained. Joel would try to give notes after a take, and Tommy would be halfway to his trailer before he finished speaking. Jones's disdain reportedly extended to verbal commentary on Carey's performance style as well. Multiple sources recall Jones using words like silly, childish, and embarrassing when referring to Carey's more exaggerated Riddler moments, though always when Carey himself wasn't present to hear the criticism. There was a scene where Jim was doing this manic dance around the set as Riddler, really throwing himself physically into the character's insanity, remembered a set decorator. Tommy watched from the sidelines, and I heard him mutter to one of the assistant directors, "This isn't acting. This is a grown man having a seizure for money." It was brutal, but he was careful to say these things just out of Jim's earshot. The professional tension reached its peak during the filming of scenes at Two-Face's lair, where the villains share significant screen time plotting against Batman. These sequences required days of shooting with both actors present, creating a pressure cooker environment that crew members remember as excruciating. "You could cut the tension with a knife," said the production assistant. "Tommy would sit as far from Jim as physically possible between setups. If Jim tried to lighten the mood with jokes or conversation, Tommy would either ignore him completely or excuse himself until filming resumed. It was the coldest professional relationship I've ever witnessed." What made the situation particularly challenging for Carey was the one-sided nature of the freeze-out. By all accounts, he continued attempting to establish some kind of working rapport throughout the early weeks of shooting, only gradually accepting the reality that Jones had no interest in anything beyond the most minimal professional interaction. "You could see Jim eventually give up," noted the camera operator. "He came in thinking they'd be this great villain team, having fun playing these larger-than-life characters together. Instead, he got complete rejection. Eventually, he just focused on his performance and stopped trying to connect with Tommy at all." Director Schumacher, known for maintaining positive set environments despite challenging circumstances, found himself in the difficult position of managing two stars who couldn't effectively work together while trying to deliver a massively expensive studio tentpole film. Crew members recall his increasingly desperate attempts to bridge the gap between his villains, all to no avail. "Joel tried everything," the set decorator remembered. "He organized dinners that Tommy wouldn't attend. He attempted to schedule bonding activities that Tommy found excuses to avoid. He even tried appealing to Tommy's professionalism directly, suggesting that the film would benefit from a more collaborative approach. Nothing worked. Tommy had decided Jim was beneath him, and no director, not even one of Joel's caliber, was going to change his mind." The end result of this professional freeze-out is visible in the final film. Critics at the time noted the strange lack of chemistry between the villains, with many pointing out that Jones and Carey, despite playing partners in crime, rarely seemed to occupy the same emotional or performative space. This disconnect wasn't a directorial choice, but the unavoidable result of a working relationship that never developed into anything approaching actual collaboration. "What you're seeing in those scenes isn't two villains plotting together," observed the camera operator. "It's two actors who couldn't stand to be in the same frame, forced together by a script, but separated by a personal antipathy so strong that even Hollywood magic couldn't hide it." Unresolved tension. Carey tried to make peace. It didn't work. In the years following Batman Forever, the rift between Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey has remained one of Hollywood's most enduring interpersonal conflicts, notable not just for its intensity, but for its strange public-private dynamic. While Carey has repeatedly addressed the situation with a mixture of humor and lingering hurt in interviews, Jones has maintained an almost complete public silence on the matter, never directly acknowledging the legendary feud that has become a permanent footnote to both men's careers. Carey has repeatedly told the story in interviews, always with a half smile, but you can see the sting, noted entertainment journalist Rebecca Santos, who has interviewed Carey multiple times throughout his career. It's become almost a trademark anecdote for him, something interviewers inevitably ask about, and he's found a way to package the hurt into a self-deprecating story. But watch his eyes when he tells it, there's still real pain there. Indeed, Carey's willingness to discuss the conflict stands in stark contrast to Jones's silence, creating a one-sided public narrative that has shaped perceptions of both men. Through various tellings over the years, Carey has maintained a remarkably consistent and generous account, typically framing the conflict as a clash of styles rather than attributing malice to Jones. "I was the new guy and he was the big established Oscar winner," Carey explained in one particularly revealing interview. "I think he was just a little freaked out by me and my antics. I don't take it personally. I just think, Tommy probably just needed a different movie to express himself." What makes Carey's public handling of the situation particularly noteworthy is his consistent attempt to find understanding rather than simply vilifying Jones. Even when recounting the brutal restaurant confrontation, Carey typically prefaces the story by expressing his initial admiration for Jones and concludes by offering contextual explanations for the negative reaction. "I still admire him. He's a phenomenal actor. I think it was just one of those things where we were on different pages," Carey stated during a Howard Stern interview, demonstrating a generosity of spirit that many find remarkable given the public humiliation he experienced. This attempt at understanding extends beyond interviews into what sources describe as actual efforts by Carey to repair the relationship in subsequent years. According to industry insiders, Carey made several attempts to reach out to Jones through mutual connections, hoping to clear the air long after Batman Forever had faded from theaters. "Jim genuinely wanted resolution," claimed a producer who has worked with both men separately. "Not because he needed Tommy's approval, but because he doesn't like carrying that kind of negative energy. He sent messages through mutual friends, expressing respect for Tommy's work and suggesting they might talk. As far as I know, Tommy never responded to any of these overtures." Jones's complete public silence on the matter has created a vacuum that only amplifies curiosity about his perspective. In the nearly 3 decades since Batman Forever, he has steadfastly refused to address the Carey situation in interviews, typically shutting down any questions with a terse "no comment" or simply changing the subject. This silence has extended to Jones's professional choices as well. According to multiple industry sources, Jones has allegedly made it clear to his representatives that he is unwilling to participate in projects involving Carey, effectively ensuring their professional paths never cross again. There was actually a potential reunion project in the early 2000s, revealed a casting director familiar with the situation. A dramatic comedy that the studio thought would be perfect for both of them, playing characters with a complex relationship that echoed their real-life dynamic. Tommy's response when his name came up alongside Jim's was immediate and unambiguous. Absolutely not. The project was reconfigured with different actors. This behind-the-scenes blackball has contributed to the permanence of their separation, ensuring that what might have eventually been resolved through professional interaction has instead remained frozen in its original state of animosity. When asked about Jones in later interviews, Carey's answer has remained consistently diplomatic but clear. "We didn't get along. Let's just say that." The simplicity of this statement belies the complexity of emotions that seems to surround the topic for Carey, who typically elaborates on even difficult subjects, but has learned to keep his comments about Jones brief and measured. What makes this ongoing tension particularly fascinating to Hollywood observers is how it represents a rare instance of unresolved conflict in an industry that typically prioritizes relationship repair for pragmatic professional reasons. "Hollywood is a small town in many ways," explained Santos. "People who clash often find ways to reconcile because the industry runs on relationships and collaboration. The fact that this particular rift has never healed, despite Carey's apparent willingness to move forward, speaks to the depth of Jones's initial reaction. This wasn't just professional frustration, it was a fundamental rejection that has proven permanent. The one-sided nature of both the conflict and its public acknowledgement has created a strange legacy. Carey is forever linked to a rejection he didn't seek and couldn't control, while Jones remains defined in part by an animosity he has never publicly addressed, but that has become an indelible part of his professional narrative. Tommy didn't just dislike Jim, he rejected everything he stood for, observed a director who has worked with Jones. The sad thing is that by maintaining such absolute silence on the matter, he's allowed that moment of rejection to become a significant part of how people understand him as a person, not just as an actor. Sometimes what you don't say defines you more powerfully than what you do. Permanent divide. The The fallout was permanent. Nearly 3 decades after Batman Forever, the rift between Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey stands as one of Hollywood's most enduring interpersonal conflicts, remarkable not just for its intensity, but for its permanence in an industry where pragmatism typically trumps personal feelings. The two were never cast together again, noted casting director Miranda Reynolds, who has worked on major studio productions for over 25 years, and it wasn't coincidental. There was an unwritten rule in casting circles that these two actors couldn't be approached for the same project, no matter how perfect they might be for the roles. Their mutual history was considered an insurmountable obstacle. This professional separation wasn't just the result of natural career divergence. According to multiple industry sources, it reflected an active avoidance, particularly on Jones's part, that effectively ensured their professional paths would never again intersect. Behind the scenes, Jones allegedly blocked a reunion film that would have paired them, revealed a development executive who requested anonymity. There was a project in development at a major studio around 2004 that would have featured them as estranged brothers forced to reunite. The concept actually played on their known friction, turning it into a meta-narrative that might have been fascinating. But when Jones learned Carrey was attached, he made it clear through his representatives that he would not participate in any project involving Carrey. The film was eventually abandoned. This behind-the-scenes rejection represents something relatively rare in Hollywood, a personal animosity so strong that it overrides the industry's typical focus on commercial opportunity. Leading actors typically set aside personal differences for promising projects, recognizing that on-screen chemistry can sometimes benefit from real-life tension. Jones's apparent unwillingness to consider any collaboration with Carrey, even years after their initial conflict, speaks to the depth of his initial reaction. The permanence of their separation has had tangible effects on both men's careers, limiting potential collaborations and shaping how they're perceived within the industry. For Jones, the Carrey incident became part of a broader narrative about his occasionally difficult personality, reinforcing perceptions of him as someone who could be challenging on set. The Jones-Carrey story became shorthand in certain industry circles, explained a veteran producer. If you were considering casting Tommy in a comedy or a more lighthearted role, someone would inevitably reference the Carrey situation as a caution about his compatibility with certain types of projects or co-stars. It probably cost him some interesting opportunities that might have shown different facets of his talent. For Carrey, the rejection became part of his personal narrative, a moment of humbling that he has incorporated into his understanding of himself and his place in the industry. Friends and colleagues note that the Jones incident is one of several experiences that shaped Carrey's later, more philosophical approach to fame and his career choices. Jim has talked about that moment as a kind of wake-up call, said a director who has worked closely with Carrey. Here he was at the absolute peak of his commercial power, thinking he had arrived at a place where everyone would embrace him, only to face this complete rejection from someone he respected. It contributed to his later questioning of the whole fame apparatus and what really matters in life beyond Hollywood approval. The permanent nature of their division is particularly striking, given how the entertainment industry has evolved in the decades since their conflict. In today's social media-driven celebrity culture, public reconciliations between formerly feuding stars have become common, often playing out on platforms like Twitter or Instagram, or through carefully orchestrated joint appearances designed to generate positive publicity. Jones and Carrey's continued separation stands in stark contrast to this trend, representing an old-school Hollywood feud that has never bent to modern expectations of public resolution. There have been no social media olive branches, no joint interviews decades later reflecting on their differences with the wisdom of age, no carefully managed reconciliation narrative. Instead, their conflict remains frozen in its original state, Carrey occasionally referencing it with a mixture of humor and lingering hurt, Jones maintaining his complete silence on the matter. This stasis itself has become part of what makes their story so compelling to industry observers and fans alike. There's something almost refreshing about the lack of resolution, observed entertainment journalist Rebecca Santos. In an era where every celebrity interaction feels managed, and every conflict eventually gets packaged into a redemption narrative, the Jones-Carrey situation stands as something authentic, a genuine personal reaction that has never been smoothed over for public relations purposes. Jones truly disliked Carrey, said so to his face, and has never felt the need to pretend otherwise, even when silence created its own narrative. This authenticity, however uncomfortable, has given their story unusual longevity in public consciousness. While many Hollywood feuds fade from memory, the Jones-Carey conflict continues to fascinate because it represents something real and unresolved in an industry built on carefully constructed images. When asked about Jones in later interviews, Carey's answer is always the same. "We didn't get along, let's just say that," noted Santos. The simplicity of that statement, and the visible restraint it represents from someone normally so expressive, speaks volumes about the impact this rejection had on him. Some wounds in Hollywood get healing press releases. This one never did. As both men have entered the later stages of their careers, the possibility of any resolution seems increasingly remote. Jones, now in his mid-70s, has shown no indication that his perspective has softened with time. Carey, who has spoken publicly about potentially retiring from acting, appears to have accepted the conflict as one of many complex experiences that shaped his journey through Hollywood. Their permanent division stands as a reminder that beneath the carefully managed surface of entertainment industry relationships, genuine human reactions, positive and negative, continue to shape careers and lives in ways that no amount of publicity management can fully control or resolve.